Hi everyone, welcome back to Inside Archaeology, the channel giving you a sneak peek inside history's mysteries and the lives of the people who investigate them. Today I am speaking to Zac Lindsey, archaeologist, Mayanist, and iconographer. We chat about his research focus on how the aesthetic category of cute manifests in ancient Mesoamerican art, why he decided to start his own company, Archaeogato Tours, and the promises and challenges of archaeological tourism. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe or like to help support the channel and tell the algorithm to promote it to new viewers. Thank you in advance for taking the time to even watch this video for longer than a few minutes. Without further ado, let's dig in. All right, so welcome to the channel, Zac. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Thanks for having me, and I really appreciate your time.
Our first question that I've got for you today is why did you transition from working or studying journalism into then archaeology?
Yeah, so I started off my career as a journalist, and I really liked the idea of taking sort of big topics and explaining them in a way that a general audience could understand. So, although at first I was writing about local politics, I always had an interest in history. I always had an interest in art and poetry. And some of my favorite stories that I wrote during my early days as a journalist were about those subjects, historical preservation being, a hot button issue in a lot of small communities. And well, I was working as a journalist. I started working as a journalist in 2008, which was a little bit of a rocky time. And by 2011, I had really realized that the field that I was in was changing so rapidly that, I had been trained as a print journalist, and most of what I had been trained to do was already kind of going by the wayside, right? So I was working in Mexico City for an American newspaper, and we were struggling a little bit. And while I was down there, we actually went under, and so I had the very interesting experience of being a foreigner in Mexico City with no income. So
Okay.
it was kind of a wild time. I like to joke that I'm probably the only person that got into archaeology for the money because, again, journalism was a very dicey situation at the time. And while I was in Mexico City, I really started to fall in love with a lot of the art scene there. So Mexico City is known as a city of museums. There are probably hundreds of museums in Mexico City. I wouldn't be surprised. I wrote a blog where I was going out to museums every weekend, and I wrote that for about 6 months, and there were still many museums on my list that I had not gotten to in, 6 months of going to
Yeah.
museums every weekend. And while I was there, I first started to see some of the Mesoamerican archaeological sites, and they were very impressive to me. So first of all, I saw Tlatelolco, Tenochtitlan, the Mexica sites, and also I lived very near to a site called Mixcoac, which is a very tiny Mexica site. And so getting to see those sites up close and kind of walking by them every day, there's a subway station in Mexico City that has a temple to the wind god in the subway station.
Wow.
So it's something you're really interacting with a lot. And then I went out to Teotihuacan, and Teotihuacan is an absolutely massive site. It's gorgeous. It's been very well restored. It's very well taken care of. And it really blew my mind. And as soon as I saw it, I kind of knew that I wanted to see if there's a way to study that culture all the time, and at least take what I had seen at that site and share it with, again, with general audiences the same way that I'd done with journalism. So when I got back from the United States, I continued in journalism for a little bit, but the whole time that I was continuing in journalism, my brain was starting to be kind of split, and all I could think about was Teotihuacan and the people of that city. And I started to study it more and more, and I decided that I should go back to school for anthropology. And I went back and I got my bachelor's in anthropology, and then eventually I got my master's in anthropology. The whole time I was really studying art and iconography, and also I'll talk a little bit more about some of my specific focuses in a moment. But I have mentioned again and again that I was really interested in Teotihuacan, but that's not what I study today, and that's not my area of expertise these days. My area of expertise is the Maya.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, as I was studying Teotihuacan, I started to learn more about the Maya. And one of the things that I learned first that really appealed to me was the fact that they have a complete writing system, so they can write full sentences. And as somebody who is really interested in poetry as a young kid, this really caught me. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember thinking, I don't want to study the Maya because if I do, I'm going to move away from studying Teotihuacan and I'm never going to study this culture again.
Yeah.
And I want to focus here on Teotihuacan. And sure enough, I was doing that very well for a little while. And then slowly I started to study the Maya more and more. It's a big part of the story of Teotihuacan is their
Mm-hmm.
interaction with Maya people. And slowly I started studying the Maya area more and studying Teotihuacan less. And today, here I am in the Yucatan Peninsula. This is where I live, and I study pretty much the Maya exclusively. I still get a little bit of reading done on Teotihuacan, but mostly the Maya stuff these days.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the focus of your research in the Maya?
The main thing that I focus on is art and iconography, as well as the written languages. I focus on something which is a little bit different than a lot of archaeologists. I focus on childhood, and I also focus on the aesthetic category, which is known as cute. So a lot of folks don't associate cute with serious art. I had a moment when I was doing there's a contest called the 3-minute thesis contest where you have to explain your master's thesis in 3 minutes. And I remember that I used the word cute in my presentation. And later on, they said that they had actually deducted points because I had used an unprofessional word. But cute is a legitimate aesthetic category that's been explored by a number of scholars. It's typically associated with modernization and capitalism and a redefinition of our relationship with goods. But we do actually see cute in ancient art as well. A lot of times when we think of ancient art, we think of the very severe, we think of the sublime. When we talk about the Maya, one of the most famous images is the images of the Yaxchilan lintels, where you see Lady Cabalchoc piercing her tongue with a
Mm-hmm.
rope. So a very intense image, very sublime image. But that's not all the art from that time. So especially in Veracruz, we have these great little figurines, which are oftentimes big smiles on their faces. They're often doing very quotidian things. Even when they're doing some of these more dramatic ceremonies, they're doing them in a way that kind of reconceptualizes our relationships with those types of ceremonies. So cute is an aesthetic category that can and should be applied both to contemporary art and to ancient art. And one of the reasons that it was so important to ancient art is because, again, like I mentioned, right, this ceremony where Lady Cabalchoc is pushing the needle through her tongue was a very, very intense experience. And for many people, it would have been very scary. And to some extent, the rulership wanted that perception that these rituals were a little bit scary and were a sublime interaction um, between dangerous natural forces and divinity and humans. But on the other hand, to get participation out of people, you also need to present things in a way that is accessible. And
Mm-hmm.
so, cute is a way of creating visual iconography that is a little bit more accessible. And we see, again, these Veracruz figurines are sort of the most famous examples of the cute in Mesoamerica, but it does appear in other places as well. The Veracruz figurines have something that, well, even early Disney animators, one of the first things that early Disney animators would ask for from other Disney animators if they were hiring someone new, is they would have them draw a circle and make a face out of that circle because circular things are cute, ovular things are less cute. Probably has to do with the way that we perceive infants. Um, and we also see in these Veracruz figurines that have elements of the cute in them. We see that they tend to be rounder than the more austere figurines coming out of places like Jaena, which are the famous Maya figurines of warriors that have removable helmets and that sort of thing. So again, these images were clearly meant to be cute. They were meant to create different relationships with rituals and with society than we normally think of when we think of ancient people, again, being very, very serious and severe and
Hmm.
austere.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about that because my experience of a lot of like Mesoamerican and Maya art is that severeness that you talked about, these very kind of almost like intimidating images because as well there's so many different layers to them and to what is going on. And yeah, I think I always feel like I'm like, wow, I just need a whole degree to just know how to read this image and tell
Yeah.
what's going on.
So it is definitely a very rich visual culture,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of complexity there.
What led you to start working as a tour guide and then starting your own archaeological tour company?
So I graduated in 2020, which was a very interesting time to graduate. As most millennials, I've had this sort of experience of getting out into the workforce right as the economy was collapsing, and then deciding to go back to school and getting out of school right as the public health was collapsing. So there weren't a whole lot of archaeology jobs when I first got out of school, and my wife and I started working for a nonprofit down here in Yucatan, and it was a really great experience. And my wife did the coordination of the study abroad program, so that really started to get her interested in tourism, and it started to get her a base knowledge of how to make sure that guests were having a really good time while they're down here, and how to coordinate tours of the area, and also just to give, again, when folks come down here, they want to have adventures, they want to have things, unique experiences. And because we live down here, we have a much, better pulse on the region than a lot of tour companies. But because we are outsiders to the area, we also know what tourists want, and we do have the perspective of an outsider as well. So that really helps
Hmm.
us to get an understanding of how to make tours that are really engaging and fun and different than what you're going to experience on, if you hop on one of these giant buses that go to Chichen Itza and have
Yeah.
this very Disneyland experience of going to the site, right? We
Hmm.
we really want you to have an intimate experience with the Maya ruins as much as we can provide that, and we want you to walk away with a deep understanding of Maya people, right? Because Maya people are still alive today, and many times these tours companies they talk about the Maya as though they don't exist anymore. And
Mm.
so we wanted to have something that was an alternative to that. And as far as me, of course, because I have the archaeological background, we do tend to focus more on archaeological tours. But we also have food tours and bicycling tours and all that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, the reason that we really got into it was just because it was something that we both had a knowledge of, and coming out of the pandemic, we didn't have a lot of opportunities to, again, for me to get into the workforce as an archaeologist. So I thought that this would be a way of really getting to share the knowledge that I've learned with people in a
Mm.
way that was dynamic and fun, and still means that I get to get out to archaeological sites as much as possible.
Best of both worlds.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, that's how I think of it.
Yeah.
It is a really great job. And,
Yeah.
I work online also. I mean, this is part-time at this point. But, when you work online, you kind of sit in front of the computer all day and drink 400 cups of coffee throughout the day. And I
Mm.
really love to get out to the sites and get to run around and have the chance to climb pyramids with folks. And, I drink a lot less coffee when I'm working out in the field.
What are some of the challenges that have been involved with running your company?
Well, I would say the biggest challenge is just getting my name out there. So
Mm.
far, a lot of my tours have come from recommendations from friends. So it's been friends of friends. And I also work with the Maya Exploration Center, which runs big, long tours, 9-day tours, and sometimes even longer of this area and a lot of areas in Peru. And Ed Barnhart, who is the person who runs the company, has a tour that he does of Easter Island. So he goes all over the place.
Mm.
But because I'm here located in Yucatan, I have an advantage that I can also do pickup tours for him. So if someone comes to the Maya Exploration Center and says, I can't do the 9-day tour, but I'm really interested in the area. Do you know anyone who can give me like a 3 or 4 day tour? And that's when he contacts me. So right now, the way that I've gotten, again, most of the tours is just by word of mouth. What I am struggling with right now is figuring out the best way of promoting them and getting out there to the right audience so that I can start attracting people, not through word of mouth.
Oh, well, hopefully everybody watching here is going to come and look at your website, and then we can help
Yep.
funnel some audience towards you, and the work that you're doing. All right, that's the kind of the end of our longer answer section. What is your best and worst field experience?
Yeah, so I don't want to say a worst. I love being in the field. The worst that usually happens is you kind of get bit up by some bugs, and even a scraped knee from time to time really is not something that I see as a negative. So when I was doing field work, I really can't think of a time that I
Mhm.
was, miserable out there.
Okay.
Um, as far as my best would go, I had this really wonderful experience of we excavated a temple floor or maybe a residential floor from the post-classic era, and it was completely plastered, and the plaster was in wonderful shape, and it was the very beautiful, smooth white plaster. And when we excavated it, as soon as we realized that it was the floor, we realized that we had to be very careful about doing any more excavation in the area. Our big hiking boots were not gonna do well on that floor. We would have destroyed it. So we all had to take off our shoes before we went onto the floor. And at the end of the day, they gave me a broom and said that they wanted me to sweep it. And so I got the experience of sweeping this 1,000-year-old floor. And today, the Maya people are very clean, and sweeping the floor of a house is a very important duty and something that's taken very seriously even today. So the idea that I was getting the chance to do something that probably would have been really important to the ancient people who lived at that site, but was something that hadn't been done in 1,000 years, was really exciting to me, and I felt a lot of camaraderie with the person who had built that floor. So hopefully, I didn't do a perfect job because there were still some roots going into the plaster and that sort of thing. But hopefully they would have been happy to know that I cared about that floor
Mhm.
enough to sweep it one more time.
Yeah, that's a great experience. What is your favorite thing that you've discovered, found, or researched?
As far as found, we found this great lip-to-lip pot in Belize. But I was actually thinking that one of my favorite things that I've researched is the Stela 3 from Piedras Negras, which shows an image of, call her Ishkatuna How or Ishwinikaba How, with her daughter. And so I've already mentioned that I study childhood and I study the cute. So analyzing this image was really important for me. I really found a lot of points of emphasis on the daughter, even though the daughter herself on the image, she plays a pretty small role. So we have Ishwini Kaba How doing sort of the Maya hand motions, and she looks very serious and grave. As we mentioned already, it's very common to see that very severe posturing in Maya artwork. But then her daughter is leaning her elbow on her knee and looking up at her mom lovingly. And it kind of adds a little bit of a dynamic that we really don't encounter very often in Maya art. Unfortunately, her daughter's face is mostly worn away, so we can't get a great idea of what her expression would have been like. But you can imagine that loving expression that a daughter has for their mom, especially a young daughter who was about 3 years old at the time. And there are
Mhm.
lots of signs on the image that the most important subject of the image is not actually Ishwini Kaba How, but actually her daughter. And there are different ways. The Ishwini Kaba How's headdress actually points up to her daughter's name. Her daughter's name falls in the exact center of the inscription. If you draw an X over the inscription, there are 5 clauses in the inscription, and her daughter's name occurs in the middle clause. So lots of points of emphasis to show how important her daughter was to them. And because her daughter was the heir, this was probably a little bit of political propaganda because they never had a male heir as far as we know. So she was probably trying to say, hey, although she's a girl, She's still the heir, so you better listen to her when she's older. And but we can also imagine that Ishwini Kabahau probably also cared very deeply about her daughter and wanted to put her in a prominent place in this inscription because she loved her.
Oh, that's a lovely sentiment. I think I probably know the answer to this one, but if you had a time machine, what era, civilization, or like site would you go visit?
Well, I actually got really like this. I'm sure every archaeologist feels this way to some point, but do you pick the one that's the most mysterious so that you can learn the most? Do you pick the one that you're the most fascinated with? I don't know. That's actually like a really tough question for me, and I almost think I might actually pick the 1930s, 1940s Mexico City, where they were going throughout their golden age. Lots of great archaeologists were coming from that time. Lots of great Mexican archaeologists. Mexican archaeology as a thing was really being born. And you also have great, very interesting characters like Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo and
Mm.
Orozco and Juan O'Gorman and other folks who I studied a lot when I was a journalist before I got into archaeology. And it just seems like it'd be a fun place to hang out and party. So my initial reaction would be to say, "Oh, I want to go to the pre-classic era to see exactly how complex it was and answer all these great questions and that sort of thing." But maybe I'll be selfish and say that I'd want to go to 1930s Mexico City so I can relax and party a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, hey, there is no right answer in this series.
Right? Yeah.
I just like to see what everybody else would say. And
It was a
lastly,
surprisingly hard question for me. That was the one where I was like, "Oh my goodness, what am I going to say?"
last question is, what would you say to encourage or inspire other people to follow in your footsteps?
To me, a lot of this is not about me or us as archaeologists, us discovering new things. It's a beautiful experience, and it really can't be conveyed in words how it feels to go to these sites and excavate them. It can't be conveyed in words what it feels like to stand on top of a pyramid and look out into the jungle.
Mhm.
But we're not really doing it for us, right? We're doing it for ancient people and to make sure that the world understands the absolute depth and breadth of ancient cultures. And I am really excited by the ability to share information about those cultures with other people and how they connect, especially to contemporary cultures. So Maya people in this area have had a lot of struggles over the years, but they are still going strong. And there's a lot of reward in touching bases with them and going out to the sites with Maya folks, people of Maya descent. One of my favorite things has really been getting the chance to share what I love about Maya culture with outsiders. And so I think that feeling of being able to connect the ancient past to the present is just really inspiring. And you don't know how great it feels until you've had the chance to do it.
Great answer. I like that. All right, well, that's everything for the interview today. Thanks once again for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you and speaking to you and learning a little bit more about Mesoamerican archaeology.
Cool. And yeah, it was absolutely a pleasure to be on the show. And thank you very much for your time too.
All right, that's everything for today. What part of the interview did you like the most? Do you have any questions for Zac? Don't forget to comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel before you leave. If Zac has piqued your interest in learning about the history of the Yucatan and Maya, head on over to his website, link in the description, and have a look at his tours. Thanks so much for watching, stay curious, and I hope to see you on my next adventure inside archaeology.